So guys, guess who's back? Yeah, guess who's back again. Guess whose birthday it is tomorrow? Oh, it's mine. You know, it's been a long decade, and to just see it sort of coming to an end, the last few hours today, so coming to an end today. Last day, in my 20s, entering a new chapter. I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it, we grow each year. Each day we're growing, I wasn't the same person yesterday. Well, I hope not. But, I just want to give, my sort of review and, what I've learned as well within the last decade. So if I quickly, look back, track back to 2015 when I turned 20, I remember, first of all, that night when I turned 20, I was standing in my toilet. I know it sounds weird, but, it was an alright-ish day. I don't remember exactly what I did on that day. Besides, I was working at a warehouse, Marks Spencer's to be specific. And it was, one of those birthdays where sort of a background sort of birthday. So nothing significant happened. And I remember that night when I stood in the toilet, I looked into the mirror just for a few seconds, and I just let it sink in. Like, I turned 20 now. I'm just curious what the future has coming. Is it really going to be a big shift? How people make out, like, when you finish your teens or whenever you finish any sort of decade and you enter a new one, there's that saying, not a specific one, but there's that saying, like, now it's a new chapter and so forth. So I literally let it sink in, and that's something I remember on the 20th. And then after that, when I turned 21, so that was 2016, and that one actually I remember very well because that was 2016, and I was actually in Medina. It was Ramadan. It was a birthday that I won't forget, because it fell on Eid day as well, the end of Ramadan, and it was joyous, everybody celebrating Eid. And then there's that feeling like you don't want anything, a big day to come on your birthday because your day will be sort of shadowed and you now have to celebrate, a different sort of thing. But anyways, as a person that don't usually celebrate birthdays, it was a win-win. The whole world is celebrating today. So, and I've got my excitement, 21-year-old, forever 21. So I prayed Eid, and there was a cake at the hotel. So after I went back to the hotel, there was a cake, and then we had the cake. Unfortunately, it didn't say my name. It said Eid Mubarak. So we had the cake, me and my other guys, from Birmingham, my mom, and the guide, or whatever they're called, the trip, the person that actually planned it. So we all had the cake, and then after that we were meant to go horse riding, I remember. But then there was a silly excuse. The guy actually said, we're not going to go today. And he said I actually got back from the guy that's got the horse stuff, camel stuff. So, he just lets out, different things for people to enjoy as a group sort of package. And the excuse he actually told us was, one of the horses is sick. Really? Like, he actually said it's sick, but it was funny at the time because, I don't know how the horse is sick, but he meant as in, like, the horse, injuries and stuff like that. A few of the horses are injured, so the guy, is looking after his, his livestock and things like that and whatnot. But yeah, it took me by surprise. And because it was my birthday still us, and, I'm not gonna, go back in a hotel or do some boring stuff. So me and the guys, we decided to do, pointed to a mountain, and we literally headed there. So we didn't plan anything, but I think it was Abu Bakr's plan. So one of the older guys in the group, he said, you know what, let's just climb a mountain. We climbed that mountain. Believe it or not, I was wearing flip-flops climbing a mountain. And, you know, going up there, it was 45 degrees. It was around 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Hot as hell, you know, climbing our way up there. And then we actually saw you can see a jinn. So we saw a jinn right at the top of the mountain, just meditating through his spiritual world and ghostly stuff. You know, we just sat there. And the way I knew it was a jinn is because, first of all, there's one way up the mountain. And because it's at 45 degrees, sat right at the top of the mountain, literally just staring when the sun is over here. So he was looking towards the direction of the sun. Didn't flinch. We were making noises and stuff like that. Like, you know, hey, hey, hey. We were just shouting our way up there. And then as we made our way up there, you know, the guy disappeared. Which, as I said, there's only one way up and one way down. The other side is completely rocks and stuff, so no one can hide. So we're completely, you know, bamboozled. And because of the heat as well, quite a few of us were actually doubting it, like, you know, is the heat getting to us? Literally, like, I'm not gonna lie, there were so many times where I felt like I was gonna pass out from literally heat stroke or something. I didn't have a cap, I didn't have anything. I was wearing like the qamis, and I was climbing it, you know, the white thobe, climbing the mountain with flip-flops and just exhausted. But anyways, as we got up there was a small cave in there. We went inside, and it was sort of like a room. You know, like the olden days when they used to carve houses out the mountains, you know, inside the mountains, and somewhat make it look like a room. It was one of those ones, and it was just like proper small, and it had like drawings on the wall, writings. On the floor was just sort of, you know, scattered pieces of hair bundles, bones, and all of these things point to one thing, you know, rituals take place in that cave. And it was like, you know, something I've been reading about years back online, you know, lectures I've been, you know, hearing from, you know, sheikhs, you know, even, you know, from the normal people that are not, you know, Muslim. These are just known rituals around the world. So anyways, it was a weird birthday, but very exciting. So we went down, my feet were bleeding and exhausted. After that, of course, went back to the hotel, and then I went out to eat, you know, sort of a birthday sort of dinner. But anyways, that was 2016. And 2017, I remember I was broke on my ass, literally. So it was a hot summer's day, I remember. We didn't do much. It was me and one other friend. We don't talk now, but, you know, we were on the same sort of level, vibe, frequency. And as much as we wanted to do something on my birthday, we couldn't, you know, financially wise. Our plans were all over the place. And these times, you know, being 22, I just wanted to fit in with the crowd and never do anything that would get me that sort of attention. And bear in mind, I was so deeply in my disassociation at that time, you know, depersonalization, derealization. So I was completely engulfed, taken away, broke. I didn't do much on my 22nd birthday. So fast forward, 2023. When I was 23 at 2018, I actually did quite a few things. So I was making, you know, illegal money and, you know, fraud, things like that. Nothing I'm proud of, you know. But what I did on my birthday was I went to Spain. I went to Mallorca. And, you know, at the time, it was more of like the sense as like a birthday week. You know, when you've got some money, you become a bit more lavish. You start to imitate the lifestyle that you've been wanting to live. So I did the little birthday week people do, you know, especially girls do that nowadays. You know, they always take it to the extreme level. But anyways, with the lads, we went to Spain. And, sorry, you hear my voice, like I said, and because I'm sort of like shivering. It's a bit cold and I decided to come out with a t-shirt. But anyways, went to Spain and I was actually not doing well. Like the day before I was throwing up. The anxiety, the nervousness, the tension towards, you know, flying out. All of that hit me. And let's just say my parents are not proud that I told them an hour before I left, literally. Packed my bags and I said, yeah,